My son won the lottery and kicked me out of my own house. We don't need your crumbs anymore. I spent the night alone crying in the cold until a homeless man covered me and said, "You look just like my late wife, Graciela." I froze when I recognized him. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story to the end and comment on which city you're watching from. That way I can see how far my story has come. My name is Graciela. I'm 69 years old, and I never thought I'd end up sleeping on the streets, much less that my own son would kick me out of the house that had been my home for 40 years. It all started that Tuesday morning when Tyler came in screaming like a madman, waving a piece of paper in the air. I thought it was a bill or some problem with work, but when I got closer, I saw he was shaking with excitement, not anger. Mom, I did it. I won, he shouted while dancing around the kitchen like a child. At first, I didn't understand a thing. Tyler is 45 years old, works in a factory, and has always been pretty serious, so seeing him like this worried me. I thought maybe he'd hit his head or something worse. "Tyler, calm down and tell me what happened," I said as I poured the coffee like every morning. That's when he showed me the lottery ticket. The numbers were there, they all matched. My son had won $250 million. At first, I was so happy for him. After so many years of working hard, living just enough, something good was finally happening to him. But my joy was short-lived. "Do you know what this means, Mom?" he told me with a smile I didn't like at all. "It means I don't have to live in this old house with you anymore. It means I can buy the mansion I've always wanted." I felt like I'd been slapped in the face. "Tyler, this is your house. It's our house." "No, Mom, this was my house because I didn't have options. Now I do." I stayed quiet, trying to process what I was hearing. Tyler continued talking as if nothing had happened, planning his new life, never including me. He talked about the house he was going to buy, the sports car, the trips he was going to take. "What about me?" I finally asked him. He looked at me as if he'd just remembered I existed. "You have your pension, you'll manage." "Tyler, my pension is $400 a month. How am I going to pay rent on that?" He shrugged. "Not my problem, Mom. Not anymore." The next few hours were a nightmare. Tyler called a moving company and started packing his things. When I told him I was going to need time to look for a place to live, he laughed. "You don't need time. You're leaving today." "Today?" "Tyler, please be reasonable." "I don't have to be reasonable with you anymore. For years you've lived off my scraps, depending on me for everything. Well, it's over. I don't need to take care of you anymore." Those words hurt more than any physical blow. My God. That's how my son saw everything I'd done for him throughout his life. The sleepless nights when he had a fever, the extra jobs I took to pay for his college, the times I went without food so he'd have what he needed. "Tyler, I raised you alone. I worked 3 jobs to give you a good education when your father abandoned us. We're enough," he yelled at me. "I'm tired of hearing the same story over and over again. Yes, you worked. Yes, you raised me. And that was your obligation. Parents have to support their children, not the other way around." I felt like my heart was going to burst out of my chest. This wasn't my Tyler. This wasn't the little boy who hugged me when I had nightmares. The young man who promised to take care of me when I was old. And he continued with a cruelty I'd never seen before. "I've always known I wasn't your first choice, always pining for that Roberto who walked away 20 years ago. Well, now you can go find your great love. I don't need you." That was the final stab. Roberto, My Tyler knew exactly where to strike to hurt me the most. By 6 p.m., I had nothing left to pack. Tyler had hired some men to change the locks. He handed me $50 as if it were a handout. "So you can't say I didn't help you," he said without looking me in the eye. I left my house with a small suitcase and a broken heart. Neighbors watched me from their windows, but no one came out to ask what was wrong. Some even closed their curtains when they saw me pass by. I walked for hours aimlessly. I had nowhere to go. My few relatives lived far away, and I hadn't spoken to them in years. The friends I did have were also older and had their own problems. When it got dark, I sat on a park bench near the train station. The November cold chilled me to the bone. I was wearing only a light jacket because I had gone out thinking I'd be back home in a few hours. That's how I spent my first night on the streets, alone at 69 years old, abandoned by the son to whom I'd dedicated my entire life. Around 2 a.m., when I couldn't stop shaking, I felt someone approaching. It was an older man, dressed in dirty, torn clothes, a homeless man. At first, I was scared, but he stopped a few feet away and looked at me with sad eyes. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked softly. I couldn't answer. I just started to cry like I hadn't in years. Without another word, the man took off his old coat and put it around my shoulders. It was very little, but at least it protected me a little from the icy wind. "Thank you," I managed to whisper. He sat at the other end of the bench, respecting my space but staying close in case I needed anything. "You shouldn't be here alone," he told me. "A woman like you, a woman like me," I repeated bitterly. "What do you know about women like me?" The man looked at me steadily for the first time since he had approached. In the dim light of the lantern, I could see his face better. His eyes were light, his hair dirty gray, but there was something familiar about his features. "You look exactly like my wife," he murmured, his voice cracking a little. My late wife's name was Graciela. I felt all the blood drain from my face. That name, that voice, those eyes. Could it be possible? "Roberto," I whispered almost voicelessly. The man froze as if he'd seen a ghost. Slowly, his eyes filled with tears. "Graciela," he said. And in that word were 20 years of pain, of nostalgia, of lost love. We stared at each other for what seemed like an eternity. Roberto, my Roberto. After 20 years, I would find him on the street dressed like a homeless person on the darkest night of my life. "I can't believe it's you," I said, touching his face with trembling hands. Despite the years of unkempt beard and dirty clothes, those eyes were still the same ones that had made me fall in love when I was 49. Roberto took my hands in his. They were rough, calloused, but still warm. "Graciela, what are you doing here? Why are you on the street?" I told him everything. Tyler, the lottery, how he had unceremoniously kicked me out of the house. Roberto listened silently, but I saw his jaw tense with every detail. "That boy always hated me," he muttered when I finished. "Ever since I was 25 and we started dating." "Why did you leave, Roberto? Why did you disappear without explanation?" Roberto lowered his gaze as if he were struggling to find the right words. "I didn't leave, Graciela. They kicked me out." "What do you mean, they kicked you out?" Roberto sighed deeply before continuing. "Remember that afternoon when Tyler came to your house and found me there? We had been talking about getting married, about making a life together." Of course I remembered. It had been one of the worst fights I'd ever had with my son. Tyler had come home from work and found me cooking for Roberto. He'd been furious. That night Tyler waited for me outside my apartment, Roberto continued. He told me that if I didn't stay away from you, He was going to get me fired from my job. He had contacts at the company where I worked. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. Graciela. The next day I went to your house, but Tyler intercepted me before I could get to the door. He told me he'd already told you everything, that you decided it was best if we didn't see each other again. I felt my stomach turn. That's not true. Tyler never told me anything. I waited for you for weeks. I thought you decided you didn't want anything serious with me. Roberto's eyes filled with pain. Tyler lied to me. And to you too. But why did you leave town? Why didn't you persist? Roberto shifted uncomfortably on the bench. Because he made good on his threat. I was fired 2 days later on a trumped-up theft charge. Tyler had made sure I couldn't get a job anywhere. I didn't have money for rent. I had no way to support myself, Graciela. Also, his voice got smaller. I met Patricia, a woman my age who worked at the supermarket. When I was jobless, homeless, she offered to help. One thing led to another, and I married her. Roberto nodded helplessly, unable to look me in the eye. It was a marriage of convenience at first. She needed someone to help her with her 2 young children, and I needed a roof over my head. But over time, I tried to be a good husband. Silence stretched between us. I felt a mixture of pain and anger that made it hard to breathe. Tyler hadn't just lied to me about Roberto, he deliberately destroyed our relationship. Were you happy? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Roberto was slow to respond. Patricia was a good woman. She never disrespected me. She never made me feel bad for not loving her the way she deserved. But happy. He was silent for a moment. No, Graciela. I was never truly happy. All these years, not a single day went by that I didn't think about you, that I didn't wonder what had become of us. What happened to her? Where is she now? Roberto's expression grew even sadder. Patricia died 8 months ago. Cancer. It was 2 very hard years of hospitals and expensive treatments. I sold everything we owned to pay for the medication, but it didn't help. Nothing. Roberto, I'm so sorry. Her children were already grown, they had their own families. When she died, I was left alone, without money, without a home. Patricia's children gave me $1,000 and told me it was time for me to move on. Now I understood why I had found him on the streets. Roberto had lost everything taking care of a woman he didn't love, but whom he had respected and cared for until the end. Have you been living on the streets since then? In shelters mostly. Some days I sleep outside when there's no room. It's not so bad, he lied, trying to smile. I've met interesting people. Roberto, this is terrible. Tyler destroyed our lives. Roberto looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Do you know what the saddest thing is about all this, Graciela? What? That Tyler knew exactly what he was doing. The day he threatened me, he told me something I've never forgotten. He told me, my mother is mine. I'm not going to share her with anyone, especially not a loser like you. She needs me, not you. I felt my blood run cold. He said that. He told me that you had suffered so much when his father abandoned you, that you didn't need any more pain in your life, that he was your priority and always would be. Tyler's manipulation had run much deeper than I had imagined. Not only had he separated us, but he had used my love as a mother to justify his cruelty. All these years I thought you hadn't loved me enough to fight for us. I confessed. And I thought you had decided Tyler was more important than us, Roberto replied. We were both victims of his lies. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Tyler. Roberto saw the name on the screen. "Don't answer," he said. But I did. I needed to hear my son's voice after everything I had just discovered. "Mom, where are you? Why do you care? The neighbors are asking me. I want to know if you've already found a place to stay." "I'm fine, Tyler." "Perfect. Oh, and Mom, I hope you understand this is the best thing for both of us. I need my space to enjoy my new life." I hung up without answering. Roberto looked at me with a sad, but not surprised, expression. 20 years later and he's still the same selfish man. He murmured. At that moment, I knew Tyler had made the biggest mistake of his life. By kicking me out of the house, he hadn't just lost his mother, he'd given me back the love he himself had taken from me. The next few days were strange. Roberto took me to the shelter where he was staying, a sad but clean place run by some nuns. They gave me a bed and hot food, no questions asked. Roberto slept in the men's section, but during the day we could be together. We talked for hours, filling in the gaps of 20 years. He told me about the jobs he'd had, always low-paying, because he had no references after what Tyler had done. He told me about Patricia, about how he'd tried to be a good stepfather to her children. About the nights he'd lay awake thinking about me. I told him about my life, too, the years alone, working at the cafeteria until I retired, taking care of Tyler, even though he never thanked me for it. I told him about the times I'd gone to the park where we used to walk, hoping to bump into him by chance. "Do you know what hurts me the most?" I said one afternoon while we were drinking coffee in the shelter's dining room. "That Tyler knew how much I missed you. For years, I asked him if you'd returned to town, if anyone knew anything about you. He always told me no, that it was better to forget you." Roberto squeezed my hand. "Graciela, there's something else you need to know about that time." His tone worried me. "What?" "Tyler didn't just threaten me, he also went to my boss, my friends, anyone who might be able to help me. He told them I was a con man, that I was trying to take advantage of you because you were a vulnerable widow." I felt rage boiling in my chest. "How did you find out about that?" "Because my boss told me the day he fired me." He explained that he'd received an anonymous call, but later found out it was Tyler who called. He told me he was sorry, but he couldn't risk any trouble. "Roberto, I didn't know about this." "Of course not. Tyler made sure you didn't. But there's more." I braced myself to hear worse. 2 weeks after I left town, Tyler came to my apartment. He told the landlord that I owed him money, that I was a dangerous man. The landlord kicked me out without returning my deposit. "How do you know that?" "Because the landlord told me years later, when I came back looking for you." I froze. "You came back for me?" Roberto nodded, his eyes filled with pain. "3 times, Graciela. The first time was 5 years after I left. I was already married to Patricia, but I couldn't get you out of my head. I just wanted to know if you were okay." "And what happened?" "Tyler saw me before I could get to your house. He intercepted me on the street and told me you'd moved out, that you'd left town to start a new life. He told me you were finally happy without me." Tears started rolling down my cheeks. "I never left that house until 3 days ago." "I know. The second time I came back was 10 years ago. Patricia had just been diagnosed with cancer, and I was desperate. I needed to see you, even from a distance. And Tyler found you again. This time, he threatened to call the police. He told me he had a restraining order against me, that if I went near you, I'd be arrested. That's a lie. There never was a warrant. I know that now, but at the time, I believed him. Tyler can be very convincing when he wants to be. Roberto took a sip of coffee before continuing. His hand was shaking slightly. The third time was 2 years ago. Patricia was already in a bad way. And I knew she didn't have much time left. I just wanted you to know that I'd never forgotten you. What did Tyler do this time? It was worse. He told me you were sick, that you had heart problems, and that any emotional shock could kill you. He told me that if I really loved you, I had to leave you alone. I felt my stomach turn. Tyler had used my supposed fragility to push away the man I loved. Roberto, I've never had heart problems. I imagined it when I saw you here, so strong despite everything you've been through, but at that moment, the fear of hurting you was stronger than my desire to see you. We were silent for a moment. The magnitude of Tyler's manipulation overwhelmed me. He hadn't just been cruel, he had been systematic, calculating. Why? I whispered. Why did Tyler do all this? Roberto sighed. I think your son never got over his father abandoning him. When he saw me in your life, he thought I was going to hurt you too. Instead of giving you a chance at happiness, he decided to protect you by keeping me away. But that doesn't excuse it. No, it doesn't. But it explains why, for all these years, every time I spoke to him, he told me you were better off without me, that you were fragile, that you needed stability, that I would only bring you problems. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Tyler again. This time Roberto asked me to answer. Hi. Tyler. Mom, how are you? I hope you found a decent place to stay. I'm in a shelter. There was a pause. A shelter. Mom, that's unnecessary. With your pension, you can rent something small. My pension is $400 a month, Tyler. Where am I going to find something I can afford with that? Well, that's not my problem. I told you, I need my space. Roberto beckoned. He wanted to talk to Tyler. Tyler, is there anyone here who wants to say hi? Who? I handed the phone to Roberto. I could hear Tyler's voice from where I was sitting. Hi, Tyler. Silence on the other end of the line. Who's Roberto? I guess you remember me. The explosion was immediate. What are you doing with my mother? Stay away from her. Tyler, you no longer have the right to decide who your mother can and can't be with. You kicked her out of her house, remember? That doesn't give you the right to take advantage of her. Roberto remained calm. I'm not taking advantage of anyone. I'm only here when she needs me. Something you never did. You know nothing about my relationship with my mother. I know you abandoned her on the street, Tyler. I know you told her I didn't need her crumbs anymore. And I know that for 20 years you kept me away from her with lies. Another silence. This one longer. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you know. Do you want me to tell your mother about the 3 times I went back for her? About the threats? The lies about restraining orders, about my supposed criminal record? I heard Tyler hang up the phone. Roberto handed my cell phone back to me with a grim expression. Now he knows you know the truth. We didn't have to wait long to see what Tyler would do with that information. The next day he showed up at the shelter. Tyler arrived at the shelter driving a new car that probably cost more than I had ever earned in my entire life. It was a bright red sports car that seemed to scream, "Look how much money I have." He got out wearing expensive sunglasses and a suit I'd never seen before. Sister Maria, the nun who ran the shelter, came to get me. "Graciela, there's a very elegant man asking for you. He says he's your son." Roberto was with me in the shelter's small garden, helping me fold clean laundry the nuns had given me. When he saw my expression, he knew immediately who had arrived. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked. "No, if Tyler has something to say, he can say it right in front of you." We walked together toward the entrance. Tyler was standing in the front door, looking at the old building with a disgusted expression on his face. When he saw me, he took off his sunglasses, and I could see his eyes were red, as if he'd been drinking. "Mom," he said, completely ignoring Roberto, "we need to talk. We can talk here privately." "No, Roberto is staying." Tyler finally looked at Roberto. And the hostility in his eyes was so intense it scared me. "You have no business being here, old man." "Tyler," I said firmly. "Roberto is my guest. If you can't be respectful, you can leave." My son looked at me as if he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "Your guest, Mom. You're living in a homeless shelter. I don't think you have the right to invite anyone over." That was the final straw. "Do you know why I'm living here, Tyler?" "Because my son kicked me out of my house after winning the lottery. Because he decided he didn't need me anymore. I'm offering you a solution." Tyler pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Here's $5,000. It's enough for you to rent something small and support yourself for a few months until you find something more stable." I looked at the envelope without touching it. "And then what?" "Then you're on your own, like any responsible adult." Roberto couldn't stay silent any longer. "Tyler, your mother is 69 years old. With a pension of $400 a month, how do you expect her to manage on her own?" "I don't remember asking your opinion," Tyler answered him without looking at him. "Besides, I don't think someone living on the streets has the right to opine about other people's finances." "Tyler, stop," I said. "Roberto is helping me through a very difficult time, something you didn't do." "Is he helping you, or is he taking advantage of your vulnerability?" Tyler approached me, lowering his voice as if he were about to tell me a secret. "Mom, that man is a loser. He always was. That's why he disappeared 20 years ago and why he's living on the streets now." "He disappeared because you threatened him," I responded. "Because you told him he was going to lose his job if he didn't stay away from me?" Tyler was quiet for a moment, but then quickly recovered. "I protected you, Mom. That man just wanted to take advantage of you." "Take advantage, Tyler?" "Roberto never asked me for money, never lied to me, never humiliated me like you just did." "Mom, you're confused. This whole situation has you all worked up." Roberto had been listening silently, but he finally spoke. "Tyler, tell your mother why you really threatened me 20 years ago." "I don't know what you're talking. Tell her you didn't want to share her with anyone, that you told me she was yours and always would be." Tyler went pale. "That's not true." "No?" "Then tell her why you threatened me again the other 2 times I tried to contact her. Tell her about the fake restraining order, about the lie that she had a heart condition." "Stop it." Tyler screamed so loudly that several people in the shelter turned to look at us. "I protected my mother from a loser like you." "You protected me?" I asked, feeling rage rising in my throat. "By destroying my chance at happiness, by lying to me for 20 years? Mom, that man would have abandoned you just like Dad. I saved you from going through that again." "No, Tyler, you decided you were more important than my happiness. You decided you had the right to control my life." Tyler took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer but colder. "It's okay, Mom. I made mistakes, but everything I did was for love, because I didn't want to see you suffer." "For love?" Roberto took a step closer. Tyler, do you want to know what love is? Love is what your mother did for you for 45 years. Working 3 jobs to pay for your college. Going without food so you'd have what you needed. Love is not what you did. Shut up. You don't know anything about my family. I know that when your mother needed you most, you threw her out on the street. Tyler turned to me, his eyes filling with tears, not from sadness, just from rage. Mom, if you stay with this man, you're going to end up just like him. On the streets, with nothing. Tyler, Roberto lost everything taking care of his sick wife. That speaks well of him, not badly. His wife? Did she tell you he was married all these years while he waited for you? Did she tell you he has children with another woman? Patricia wasn't my wife when I loved your mother, Roberto chimed in. And her children were never mine. I married her after you took me away from Graciela. Liar. Tyler, I said. That's enough. I want you to leave. I'm not leaving without you. Then you're going to be waiting a long time. Tyler stared at me as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then he took out his phone and made a call. Yes, I want to report that there's an older man harassing my mother at the shelter in San Jose. No, she can't defend herself, she's confused. Yes, I think he's manipulating her. He hung up and looked at me with a cruel smile. We'll see how brave you feel when the police arrive. Tyler, did you call the police on Roberto? I called to protect you, like I always have. At that moment, I knew my son had crossed a line from which there was no coming back. Not only had he kicked me out of the house, not only had he destroyed my relationship with Roberto, now he was trying to use the authorities to control us. Tyler, I said with a calmness I didn't know I had. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Like what? Why? Because now I understand who you really are, and I no longer have any doubt about what I have to do. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, Tyler discovered that his plan wasn't going to work as expected. When the 2 officers arrived, Tyler immediately strode toward them with the confidence of someone who was used to getting his way. He looked imposing in his expensive suit and with his sports car parked outside. Officers, thank you for coming so quickly, he said in an authoritative voice. My mother is being manipulated by this man. She's 69 years old and very vulnerable. The younger officer looked at Roberto, then at me, and finally at Tyler. What exactly is the problem, sir? This man, Tyler pointed at Roberto contemptuously, is a homeless man who's taking advantage of my mother. She's confused, and he's manipulating her into giving him money. Roberto remained calm, but I felt rage boiling in my veins. Officer, I said, taking a step forward. My name is Graciela Morales, I'm 69 years old, and I'm completely of sound mind. This man is Tyler, my son, who kicked me out of my house 3 days ago after winning the lottery. The older officer, who had gray hair and looked more experienced, looked at me carefully. Ma'am, can you explain the situation? My son won $250 million in the lottery. Instead of celebrating together, he told me he didn't need me anymore and kicked me out of the house where I'd lived for 40 years. He gave me $50 and changed the locks. Tyler immediately intervened. That's not true, officers. My mother is exaggerating. I offered her money to move to a place more appropriate for a person her age. A more appropriate place, I asked, unable to contain my indignation. You mean a homeless shelter? The younger officer took notes. Sir, is it true you kicked your mother out of the house? Tyler changed tactics. Officers, my mother has always been very dramatic. I told her it was time we became independent of each other. I offered her financial help. You offered me $5,000 to clear your conscience, I replied. Do you know how long that lasts on a pension of $400 a month? The older policeman turned to Roberto. And what is your relationship with the lady? Roberto Fernandez, Roberto responded with dignity despite his appearance. I met Graciela 20 years ago. Her son threatened me to stay away from her, and now that we've reunited, he's trying to separate us again. That's a lie. Tyler yelled. This man is a con man. He's been living on the streets, and now he wants to take advantage of my mother. Tyler, I said with a calmness that surprised me. Tell the officers why Roberto has been living on the streets. Because he's a loser who can't hold down a job. Roberto spoke calmly. Officers. I lost my house 8 months ago when my wife died. I sold everything I owned to pay for her medical treatments. I don't have any family who can help me. The older police officer nodded. It was obvious he'd seen many similar cases. Tyler was getting desperate. His sob story doesn't matter. What matters is that he's manipulating a vulnerable older woman. Vulnerable. I finally snapped. Tyler, I worked 3 jobs to raise you alone. I managed the household finances for 40 years. I made all the major decisions in our lives. Since when am I vulnerable? Sister Maria, who had been watching from the shelter entrance, approached the group. Officers. If I may interrupt, I am Sister Maria, director of this shelter. Graciela arrived here 3 days ago and has been one of our most independent and clear-headed guests. Roberto has been helping her, and they both behave like decent, respectful people. Tyler glared at the nun irritably. Sister, you don't know the whole story. I know enough, Sister Maria replied firmly. I know a son who kicked his elderly mother out onto the street and is now trying to control who she can talk to. The younger officer closed his notebook. Sir, based on what we've heard, your mother appears fully competent to make her own decisions. We don't see any crime here. But he's manipulating her. The older officer intervened. Sir, we've spoken with both adults, and both appear to be here of their own free will. Unless you have evidence of a specific crime, we can't do anything. Tyler fell silent for a moment, but I could see his mind working quickly. Suddenly, his expression changed and he smiled in a way that gave me chills. Fine, he said in a dangerously calm voice. If that's what Mom wants, so be it. But I want you to know something. He came close to me until his face was very near mine. For 20 years, every time this loser tried to get close to you, I stopped him. I lied to him about restraining orders. I told him you were sick. I told him you'd moved out of town. Do you know why I did all that? My heart started beating faster. Something in his tone told me the worst was yet to come. Because you are mine, Mom. You always have been mine. After Dad abandoned us, you were all I had and I was all you had. I wasn't going to let any man ruin that. Roberto took a step toward Tyler. Tyler, your mother is not anyone's property. Oh, no? Tyler laughed in a way that reminded me of his father at his worst. Then explained to me why for 20 years she never had a date, never went out with anyone, never tried to rebuild her life. It was because you sabotaged any possibility of her being happy, I replied, feeling tears start to roll down my cheeks. Exactly, Tyler shouted, and his mask finally fell completely. Because you don't need anyone else. I'm your son. I'm your family. Not this loser who's going to abandon you as soon as he gets bored. The police officers looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable with the intensity of the scene. Tyler, I said in a trembling voice, do you realize what you just confessed? Confessed? I have nothing to regret. Everything I did was to protect you. You didn't protect me, Tyler. You isolated me. You controlled me. You stole 20 years of happiness from me. Tyler stared at me for a moment, and for the first time in days I saw something like pain in his eyes. Mom, he said in a softer voice, everything I have, everything I am, I owe to you. You are the only person who has truly loved me. I can't lose you. You already lost me, Tyler, the day you kicked me out of the house. No. His voice became desperate. We can fix this. You can come live with me. I can buy a big house where we both have our space. And Roberto is not part of this family. I looked at my son, this 45-year-old man who had just confessed to destroying my life out of possessiveness, and I made the hardest and most important decision of my life. You're right, Tyler. Roberto is not part of your family, but I'm not either. The words came out of my mouth with a clarity and strength I didn't know I had. Tyler stood motionless as if he couldn't process what he'd just heard. What did you say? He whispered. I said that I am no longer part of your family, Tyler. A family doesn't control, doesn't manipulate, doesn't throw members out on the street when they're no longer needed. The police officers looked at each other, clearly sensing this was a private moment slipping out of control. The older one spoke first. Ma'am, sir, I think it's best if you resolve this family matter without us. There's no crime here for us to address. Tyler ignored them completely. He came toward me with panic in his eyes. Mom, you can't be serious. I'm your son. You love me. I loved you, Tyler. I loved you more than I'll ever love anyone in this life. But the man standing in front of me is not the son I raised. I don't know who you are. I'm the same as always. I just want to protect you. Roberto came closer and put his hand gently on my shoulder. Graciela, you don't have to do this here in public. Tyler saw the gesture and exploded again. Don't touch her, you have no right. Tyler, I said firmly. Roberto has every right in the world to touch me because he respects me, cares for me, and has never lied to me. He's going to hurt you like Dad did. You'll be happy for a while, and then he'll abandon you when he gets bored. Tyler, your father abandoned me because he was a coward. But Roberto is not your father. All men are the same. I didn't respond, just looked at Roberto with a tenderness I hadn't felt in 20 years. Roberto sacrificed everything for a woman he didn't love because it was the right thing to do. Your father didn't even sacrifice for the woman he supposedly did love. Tyler began pacing in circles, pulling at his hair. This can't be happening. You can't choose him over me. I'm not choosing you below anyone, Tyler. You eliminated yourself. The police withdrew discreetly, but Sister Maria stayed nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. Mom, Tyler pleaded, and for the first time in days I heard something of my real son in his voice. Please, can we start over? You can come live with me. I can buy us a beautiful house. We can travel together, do all the things we never could when I was young. And Roberto. Tyler looked toward the man who had been standing silently by my side through this whole confrontation. Roberto can visit you on weekends with supervision. Roberto laughed, but without humor. Tyler, your mother is not a child who needs supervised visitation. Shut up. I'm not talking to you. Tyler, I said. To start over, we'd have to trust each other, and I no longer trust you. Why? Because of Roberto? Everything I did was for your own good. No, Tyler, everything you did was for your own good, to keep control of my life. Tyler fell silent for a moment, breathing hard. When he spoke again, his voice had changed once more. Now it sounded cold, calculating. Fine, Mom. If that's what you want, so be it. But I want you to remember something. I have money, a lot of money, and you have nothing. When this loser abandons you, when you realize you're living on the street with a man who can't even buy himself decent clothes, don't come crying to me. I won't take you back. This is your last chance. I looked at my son, this man who had been the most important thing in my life for 45 years, and I felt a strange calm. Not anger, not sadness, just peace. Tyler, you also have a last chance. You can apologize for everything you've done. You can admit you were wrong. You can ask me to forgive you for throwing me out of the house, for lying about Roberto, for trying to control my life. Tyler stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then he straightened, adjusted his tie, and spoke in a completely cold voice. I have nothing to apologize for. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, and when you regret it, it will be too late. He headed toward his sports car, but before he reached it, he turned one last time. One more thing, Mom. All the neighbors, everyone in town, is going to know you chose a homeless man over your own son. You'll live with that shame for the rest of your life. Tyler, I replied with a small but genuine smile, the only shame I'll carry is having raised a man so selfish. Tyler got into his car and left, his tires screaming against the pavement. Roberto hugged me gently, and for the first time in days I allowed myself to cry. But they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of relief. Are you sure about this, Graciela? Roberto asked me. You just lost your son. I wiped away my tears. I lost my son 3 days ago when he threw me out of the house. What I just did is rid myself of a stranger who was trying to control my life. Sister Maria approached us. Graciela, Roberto, you can stay here as long as you need, but I also want you to know that I know several people in town who need help with elder care, house cleaning, gardening, if you're interested. Roberto and I looked at each other. Sister, I said, I think we're interested in staying in this town. Perfect. And don't worry about a place to live. There's a small apartment above the bakery that's available. The owners are friends of mine, and I'm sure we can work something out. 3 months later, Roberto and I got married in a small ceremony in the shelter's chapel. Sister Maria was the one who married us, and the other shelter guests were our witnesses. We didn't have expensive rings or a fancy dress, but we had something I'd never had in my first marriage, true love. Roberto found work in a mechanic's shop, and I began caring for an elderly lady who lived near our apartment. We didn't earn much money, but it was enough to live with dignity. Tyler never contacted us again. According to town gossip, he had bought a mansion in the city and moved there with a much younger woman he'd met after winning the lottery. The neighbors said he spent money like water, buying expensive cars and throwing extravagant parties. Aren't you curious to know how he is? Roberto asked me one night as we had dinner in our small apartment. No, I answered honestly. I made my decision the day he threw me out of the house. There's no turning back. Roberto took my hand across the table. Do you regret anything? I looked at my husband, this man who had waited 20 years to be with me, who had lost everything caring for someone else, who worked hard every day to build a new life with me at 70 years old. I regret only one thing, I said. What? Losing 20 years without you. Roberto smiled and kissed my hand. Outside, the rain began to fall softly against the windows of our small apartment. It was a beautiful, peaceful sound. For the first time in my life, I was completely free. Free to love whom I wanted. Free to make my own decisions. Free to be happy. And that freedom was worth more than all of Tyler's millions.